Freedom from enslavement in America involved many long and difficult struggles, slave rebellions, attempted escape, and even fighting and dying in a bloody war between the states.
The number of African Americans that fought in the Civil War was approximately 250,000. That would include United States colored troops, African Americans that fight in United States volunteer units, and in the U.S. Navy. The number of African Americans that lost their lives during the Civil War was approximately 40,000.
But wartime sacrifice did not end the struggle for full freedom and equality, nor would the enactment of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery throughout the United States, nor the 14th Amendment granting blacks their rights as citizens, and not even the 15th Amendment, which granted all men the right to vote. The conscription of black troops in the Civil War began a new chapter in the continuing struggle for freedom, equality, and justice.
When the Civil War began, it was not legal for men of African descent to join the Federal Army. In 1792, Congress had banned the enlistment of men of African descent into the Federal Army. In July of 1862, Congress gave President Lincoln the authority to recruit men of African descent into the Federal Army.
But just how were slaves of African descent convinced to fight in the Civil War? What were they promised? How did they fight? And most importantly, what did they gain?
How does the enslaved African American receive the news that he now has the opportunity to fight and win his freedom? With wild enthusiasm would be the words used by John S. Rock, the first African American to be admitted to the bar of the U.S. Supreme Court. It was with wild enthusiasm that these enslaved Americans could now join the Union Army, fight and win their own freedoms, but not only their own freedom, but the freedom of their own families. They could become the emancipators, the great emancipators, if you will, the liberators of their own families. This was an opportunity of a lifetime.
To assist recruitment efforts, abolitionist Frederick Douglass wrote a newspaper editorial entitled Men of Color to Arms. Douglass urged blacks to earn their equality and show their patriotism by fighting in the Union cause. The Massachusetts 54th Regiment was the first black unit to be formed.
Two of his first recruits were his youngest son, Charles Douglass, and his eldest son, Lewis Douglass, who both enlisted in the 54th Massachusetts when it was first organized in February of 1863. His eldest son, Lewis Douglass, was quite skilled in drill when he got there, and he became the lead drill sergeant of the 54th Massachusetts. The order from the War Department, published in May of 1863, created a separate bureau of the U.S. Army. This separate bureau of the U.S. Army is where all the United States colored troop regiments were mustered into service. So even the 54th Massachusetts, which retains its state designation, was brought in to the Bureau of United States colored troops.
Although recruitment speeches promised black soldiers equality in the Union Army, they were not treated equally, yet they performed with distinction.
Their courage on the battlefield really changed the opinion of many Americans of European descent, because it was very clear after watching those soldiers on the battlefield that men of African descent could in fact fight. President Lincoln said that the war against the South could not have been won without the help of the black freedmen.
So how are these brave men, these freedom fighters, remembered today?
The African American Civil War Museum opened up in 2000 under the leadership of Dr. Frank Smith Jr., the founding director of the museum. He had a dream to build a memorial to these freedom fighters, and in 1998 he dedicated the African American Civil War Memorial at 10th and U Street to these soldiers. Opened up the museum 2 years later, and at the African American Civil War Museum, we tell the story of these American freedom fighters who marched from slavery to freedom to become the liberators of their own families. These are our forefathers who helped save the Union, abolish slavery, and establish democracy. In fact, all Americans should be grateful to these Americans who make it possible for us today, in good faith, to pledge our allegiance to an indivisible republic, a republic they helped keep together, with liberty and justice for all. They fought expressly to extend the blessings of liberty to all Americans. These are American freedom fighters, and all Americans should be proud of them, grateful to them, and especially Americans of African descent.